This is the Digital Savage Experience Podcast, hosted by Roman Prokopchuk, bringing you all things digital marketing, tech, business, and motivation. What's stopping you from becoming relentless in all aspects of life? Are you ready to become a digital savage? Let's get into today's episode.
Hey everyone, this is Roman Prokopchuk, and this is the Digital Savage Experience, episode 61. Why socialism and communism isn't the answer, coming from the perspective of somebody that was born under that type of regime and then immigrated to the United States. So if you don't know, originally from Ukraine. I was born in 1984 in Lviv, Ukraine, basically lived there till 1989, and then began the immigrant process where someone sponsored us in terms of relatives in the United States. Basically, you needed a sponsor to come over, so basically somebody vouched for you and basically took responsibility for you if anything should happen in terms of a medical or a financial sense. So basically the process there or then was you go to Vienna, Austria, stay for a little bit, and then go to Rome, Italy, stay for a little bit, and then finally end up in the United States. So I ended up in New Jersey, and I've stayed here since that time. But recently, I've heard a lot of stuff about, socialist policies, more extreme, and bringing about like a socialist overhaul in terms of laws and mandates in this country. Even bills proposed currently, like the Green Deal, a new version of the New Deal. So I just wanted to get into it a little bit from the perspective of somebody saw how it doesn't work, and maybe change your mind, maybe not, but just give my perspective on the topic. So first I want to kind of explain or give you a definition of communism and socialism and how it applies to capitalism, because I know communism and socialism kind of run hand in hand, but at some points they are different and it gets a little confusing. So communism and socialism are economic and political structures that promote equality and seek to eliminate social classes. The two are interchangeable in some ways, but different in others. As I said, in a communist society, the working class owns everything, and everyone works towards the same communal goal. There are no wealthy or poor people, all are equal, and the community distributes what it produces based only on need. Nothing is obtained by working more than what is required. Communism frequently results in low production, mass poverty, and limited advancement. Poverty spread so widely in the Soviet Union in the 1980s that its citizens revolted, which I can attest to. Like communism, socialism's main focus is on equality, but not seeing that happen in my perspective. But workers earn wages that can spend as they choose, while the government, not citizen-owned, operates the means for production. Workers receive what they need to produce and survive, but there's no incentive to achieve more, leaving little motivation. Some countries have adopted aspects of socialism. The United Kingdom provides basic needs like healthcare to everyone regardless of their time or effort at work. In the United States, for example, welfare and the public education system are all a form of socialism, which those two things aren't bad, but a complete overhaul based on, other countries around the world would most likely be pretty catastrophic. Both are opposite of capitalism, where limitations don't exist and reward comes to those who go beyond the minimum. In capitalism, society's owners are allowed to keep the excess production they earn, and competition occurs naturally, which fosters advancement. Capitalism tends to create a sharp divide between the wealthiest citizens and the poorest citizens. However, with the wealthiest owning the majority of the nation's resources. So, I guess anyone can argue some talking points about communism, socialism, and capitalism's pros and cons, like inequalities, and communism and socialism try to promote equality, but that never happens. And I think a lot of people here use examples like UK in terms of their healthcare systems in Canada, but they have other things that aren't really going for them, like taxes. The UK rate, I don't know the exact numbers, but it's at least 50%. So it's kind of crazy, or higher. So in the Scandinavian countries are always, a example used by people that want a socialist system, saying, in the Scandinavian countries, they get free healthcare, free education, free, everything. But excuse me, they're not necessarily, owned by the government. So it's not, a true socialist structure. For it to be socialist, the government has to basically control and run anything. And in the Scandinavian countries, that doesn't happen. So the other thing is, with those, they're limited populations. So the country is a lot smaller in terms of, obviously, area and population, in terms of the difference between that and the United States. But my thing is, the Soviet Union was kind of both, in terms of calling itself socialist and communist, and neither of which was true from the traditional sense. From the communist sense, the people didn't own the industry. Basically, they were rich and they were poor, and like in capitalism and any other system, there was extreme rich and extreme poor. So that doesn't hold true that everybody was equal. There was it was more feudal, in my opinion. It was basically a ruling class, what was the Communist Party and everyone in it, and then all the workers that basically didn't really get much. So when they say kind of in communism and socialism, everyone, gets a certain amount, or, what they need to survive, there was always the people that got more and got less. So in communism, everybody owned, were part of the manufacturing and owned it, and basically had a say or got a share. And that didn't happen. I remember as a kid, obviously I was super young under that structure and came here when I was, went to kindergarten. But I remember standing in bread lines with my mom. Like, you couldn't go to the supermarket to get a loaf of bread. Like, you literally needed to stand in a line for hours with other people to get a loaf of bread. It was a generic loaf of bread that everybody else got. Things like oranges and clementines and tangerines were a luxury. Fruits that were a warmer climate and, found in other areas of the world. You had like one orange or one tangerine, I remember, for like a holiday, and that was like the biggest gift ever. So you went into a store, there was nothing on the shelves, primarily, only things that were made locally, and that's about it. Import sucked. There was nothing coming in, and if it did, it was on the black market, and it was super expensive. Power was turned off periodically, and so was water. So you had until a certain amount of time in the afternoon or the evening. They switched it up in different areas where they would turn on the hot water and turn it off. So if you needed a shower or a bath during the times of the cold water, I mean, you had to suck it up or wait, another 12 to whatever amount of hours until the warm water would come on. There was that kind of universal, I guess, healthcare aspect, but then the doctors had no incentive. Granted, I don't necessarily agree with the existing healthcare system in the United States right now in terms of being profit driven and not really the actual person that is being treated. But I mean, to a certain extent, obviously it's capitalist, so it's driven by profit. But although there was a medical system, I'm not saying it was the worst or the best. It just, for things like that, you had to wait forever because everybody's going to the doctor, everybody is getting it for free, and there would be corruption in terms of you're in a line, someone is always going to try to do something to skip to the head of the line. In this case, bribes. People would bribe, bring a bottle of liquor, bring some, at the time, I guess it was rubles, um, during the 80s. And most likely than not, you would see a specialist or an expert, or if you had a friend or a hookup. So it wasn't, like blanketed where everybody was equal and everybody got the same care. There were still differences. And also in education, you can get straight A's, which my mom did, and basically you couldn't practice your faith or your religion under communism. So when the communist government found out, they basically, what she would be the equivalent of a valedictorian here and get like some kind of gold medal and do a speech. They took that away from her, based on that, she didn't kind of denounce her religion. That's one reason we kind of came to the US as well, the reason being religious persecution. So the point I'm trying to make here is in higher, ed institutions, people could buy degrees. They could bypass any class and buy a master's, bachelor's, doctorate in anything if you had the money. So if you had the money, you could do pretty much anything. And I mean, still that happens around the world in every system. So I think people here that, you know, glamorize socialism and communism, they've never lived in it. So I kind of challenge the people that are so gung ho about socialism and communism, um, to go and at least visit. I'm not saying live. Go to what's happening in Venezuela right now and see how you like it. Go to North Korea. Go to even Russia, even though it's not a communist country now, they're bringing back some of the same oppressive laws. It's state controlled media. You can't say anything about the government. They made literally laws that, made it a crime to have an opposing viewpoint from the government, or if you say something that you don't agree with the government or say something that's, bad about the president or the government, you pretty much get locked up. You cannot assemble in terms of protests. So you don't have a freedom of speech. You can see what's happening with Russia and, invading my country under false pretexts and annexing parts of my country and having parts of my country in a stalemate. Like, I mean, Russia now is the same Russia it's been. So if you see Putin doing some of the stuff that he's doing now, you won't, if you can amplify it by 10, 20, 30, and that was going on under, a socialist communist structure during my time in the Soviet Union in the 80s. Obviously, my time, I'm not speaking like an adult when I was little, but I still observed a lot of stuff. There was still extreme poverty and there was still extreme wealth under those systems during that time. So, like, I mean, people here just think that, bringing that about is going to be this crazy utopian thing and that capitalism is evil. Yes, I think parts of capitalism, um, can be misconstrued. The whole, that money drives everything, that, you're either rich or you're either poor, and all the rich people control, you know, all the assets and all the wealth. Well, some of them attained them through family, but some of them busted their ass, started with nothing, and raised themselves up. Like they're self made millionaires, they're self made billionaires, but they applied themselves. They did what they needed to do. They didn't complain, and they took advantage of a capitalist system where if you go above and beyond and you try your best, most likely, if you do the right things and you meet the right people along the way and everything else aligns, you will become successful. I can't say the same thing if I was living in Russia under that system, or in Venezuela, or in North Korea, or anywhere else that highlights a socialist or communist viewpoint or perspective. Even if you want to, like I said, the example I used with Scandinavian countries, which they aren't truly socialist because the government doesn't control everything. It's not, state controlled. They have still a capitalistic economy structure. So only their political policies are socialist. But even with that, have fun. Go pay 60, 70% in taxes and then tell me how you feel. I don't know, maybe it's just me, but obviously I've been in the United States since 1990. So at this point, I've assimilated in a lot of ways, but I still hold a lot of the values that, I've developed in the worldview in terms of my experiences under, communism and socialism. But I think people in the United States are super soft. They have no idea what it is to grow up in a structure like that, or the patience or the restraint, or, the lack of free speech. People take their free speech for granted so much. And all these people that are complaining on the left about Trump and everything, and saying, I mean, a lot of stuff that, they may have a point, but a lot of stuff not true and is, inflammatory. If this was anywhere else, if this was Russia present day, all of those people would be locked up, probably beaten, and probably majority of them disappear to somewhere in Siberia and never come back. Now, they have the luxuries to complain under, the First Amendment, and they're their right to do so if that's what they believe, but they take that for granted. Super soft. I think if anything ever happened here, something to the effect of another Great Depression or some kind of famine or some kind of, internal struggle, people would just implode. Like people are just getting up until a certain amount of time, I've never used the word triggered. Like people are getting triggered by other people uh, aura and the vibe they're giving off. Come on, like you got to have some kind of toughness. Like from Ukraine was a country in history that was invaded a lot. They fought a lot, not by them wanting to, but by choice, by preserving themselves as a state and the body and protecting their people. So I think if you want to dramatically roll that through, I think pure socialism and pure communism goes against what this country was founded on and the Constitution. And the people that are proposing this and walking around when they should be working or building themselves up or giving more effort, like, I mean, it's just absurd. It's like, this is the freest country in the world, even traveling around the world, from what you can say, what you can do, your movement, in terms of government not regulating industries and not doing a lot in terms of like limiting you as an individual business owner and things of that nature. And then people still, have the audacity to keep complaining, which they can, but just sit down and think about it. Do some research. Like you're throwing out, like I said, Scandinavia, cool. Move to Scandinavia then, pay 60, 70%, and then tell me how or what you want. But you're not going to get a Scandinavian citizenship. It's not really that easy. And basically, the suicide rate in Scandinavian countries is, I think, higher, if I'm not mistaken. You can fact check me if you want, than the United States. So it can't be all sunshine and rainbows and people skipping down the street. They still have their issues. No system is perfect. But I think what we have in terms of freedom in the United States, it hasn't really been replicated anywhere in the world or even present day. So just think about it. Think about other viewpoints, especially opposing viewpoints, and don't look at mainstream media. Media is supposed to be not biased and just say facts. Here in other countries in the world, right now, obviously, majority of the media is left-leaning. There are obviously some pockets of right-leaning. Regardless of left or right, they should be, neutral, presenting the facts. But the left-leaning ones focus on stories that, want to defame Trump or attack Trump, or, the Republicans, and then vice versa. The right wants to attack the liberals and some of the politicians and Nancy Pelosi. Why don't you just stop attacking each other and just give the facts and let people choose? People, that's the problem. A lot of people are thinking for themselves now around the world because they can bypass the mainstream media and actually find facts for themselves. So I would encourage you to do that. Don't believe something on face value. Always challenge ideas. Always do the research and decide for yourself. And if you want a system differently than the United States, why don't you go live in that system? I'm not, trying to be sarcastic or anything, but literally go for a week. Go to North Korea. I don't even know if you can get in. Go to Russia and try to protest. Try to have an opposing viewpoint other than what the government is saying and see where you end up. You're definitely not going to just stand there and protest peacefully and gather. You're going to be thrown into a cell and beaten. So, don't tell me about freedom. Don't tell me about anything or the lack thereof, because you have it very well in the United States. So go look at other countries, travel, get a different worldview, or make and mold your worldview to be a little more inclusive and have facts from all over the place, not just talking points from liberal media or talking points from conservative media. Just think for yourself, be a free thinker, and do you. And I guarantee you may change your mind. Until next time, guys, take care.
If you're like me, finding a place to eat is never an easy thing to do. Whether I'm in my hometown of Ewing, New Jersey, or traveling, I always find myself wishing I had a trusted friend I could call to tell me where to eat. The infatuation is that friend. The infatuation helps you find the right restaurant for any situation. Need a place for a first date? Trying to find a spot for your birthday that you don't want to celebrate except you also kind of do? The infatuation has you covered in all of these situations and many more. So if you ever need to find a place to eat but don't want to read through thousands of unreliable crowdsourced reviews, hit up theinfatuation.com or download their free app for iOS and Android to search thousands of restaurant reviews and guides in 22 major cities around the world. Or let the infatuation do the work for you by sending a text to 64560. A real person will respond and help you find a restaurant that's perfect for whatever situation you find yourself in.
This podcast has been brought to you by Nova Zora Digital. Find out how Nova Zora Digital can help your company grow online. Learn more at novazoradigital.com. Until next time, all you digital savages.